2024 may be the year of the abortion rights Republican. That's according to a recent edition of the Washington Post's Early Brief. The newsletter explores how the overturning of Roe v. Wade 2 years ago is changing the positions of some GOP lawmakers this election cycle. Its co-author, Leigh Ann Caldwell, joins us now. Leigh Ann, it's great to see you. She is also an anchor for Washington Post Live. Leigh Ann, I want to start with your reporting, and if you could give us some examples of Republicans now expressing some level of support for abortion rights or IVF, and why they're willing to do that now.
Yeah, so they have quite a different tune since pre-Dobbs, before Roe was overturned, and also since the last election cycle when Republicans performed they did not perform nearly as well as they were expected to, in large part because of the issue of abortion. Now Republicans, especially in the House, who are in very, very close competitive races in swing districts, are now starting to say, hey, they aren't against they would never support a federal abortion ban, or that they support IVF. Now, in some cases, it flies in the face of what their previous positions are, but some examples in upstate New York, like Congressman Molinaro or Congressman Lawler, who are in tough re-election races, or in California, Michelle Steele in Orange County, who is running for re-election there, who said straight to camera, look, I support IVF. Now, Michelle Steele, for example, just one example, she says she supported IVF, but she used to sponsor a personhood bill. What that means is that it would define a person at the moment of conception, which means that would make IVF illegal. So there's a lot of contradictions here, but Republicans in these close purple districts have realized that being anti-abortion is not necessarily politically good.
Well, our CBS News polling shows that abortion is a major factor in the votes of many likely voters, but not to the extent of other issues like the economy or the state of the democracy. So is it surprising to you that, a substantial number of Republican lawmakers are not just talking about the issue, but reversing their positions?
So I talked to some Republicans about this, especially Republicans who work on some of these campaigns, and even some independent political analysts who say that people might not necessarily go to the polls and vote specifically on the issue of abortion. But if a person who is trying to decide between two candidates where the economy is a much more important issue, but they are looking at the economic record and the Republican candidate does not support access or right to an abortion, they might not vote for that person despite the fact that the economy is a much more important position. So Republicans acknowledge that it is playing a role in how people vote, whether it's the top issue or not.
And of course, it's not just abortion. Reproductive freedoms at large is on the ballot in many ways. And just yesterday, Senate Republicans blocked legislation to protect access to IVF treatments across the nation. But we know that Donald Trump and some other Republican lawmakers support IVF. Can you explain the disconnect here?
Yeah, so Senate Republicans did not vote for this bill yesterday, except for two of them, two pro-choice Republicans, Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, because they say this was just a political vote, that it wasn't going to go anywhere, that it was just Democrats playing politics, which is absolutely true. They're trying to put Republicans in a tough spot, but some Republicans have argued that, look, this is an easy vote to take. It just ensures the right and the access to IVF for a woman. It doesn't even do that much. But Republicans said that they're not going to do it. They insist that they support IVF. They signed a letter in support of IVF, but their record doesn't necessarily match up with what they say.
And of course, we saw in 2022 during the midterms that abortion played such a huge role, but now we are, several years away from the Dobbs decision, more than 2 years. And also, we have a presidential election this time around, and we know the president can't change the law. Those are members of Congress. So how do you think abortion is going to impact the election in November?
Well, people think it's still going to be a big issue, and you just look at the positions that Donald Trump has taken over the past few months. He's wobbled on the issue of abortion, gone back and forth. I think he's finally settled on the fact that he would veto a federal abortion ban. In the debate, he said he was a leader in fertilization, meaning IVF. And so he understands that this is a political liability for Republicans. And so that's the expectation that it's still going to play a big issue, especially in what is expected to be a really close presidential race, really close battleground Senate seats, and in some House races too. And remember, there's at least 10 states that are going to have abortion referendums on the ballot, and Democrats hope that that continues to also drive up voters and lead people to vote for the Democratic ticket.
Yes, Trump's position has certainly evolved many times over the past few weeks even. Leigh Ann Caldwell, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.